Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Pamela Werntz, the director of the Emmanuel Music Bach Institute, and we're very excited to have a distinguished set of panelists for our second public, well, I guess our third public event. We had, the first one was on Saturday afternoon, and then Monday evening, of course, we had a fascinating conversation, Ryan and myself and Adrian Anantawan. This evening we are continuing the dialogue about Bach and society, and in order to pursue that question, we have the rector Pamela Werntz from Emmanuel Church, we have the rector Carrington Moore from Ecclesia Ministries, and we have two of our collaborative artists with us. We have Avi Manning, who is a poet, and we have Chandra Batra, who is a multimedia artist, including performance art. I regret to say that my third artist, Anthony Caron, was not able to join us this evening. We are still very eager to collaborate with him. We have some beautiful artwork that we hope we will be able to display during the showcase concert. For now, I hope that you enjoy this conversation.
This, does that work? Yeah. So, and I want to frame response to the idea of Bach and society, and specifically Bach and a just society, not just any old society. Bach was very concerned about being part of a just society, and I thought that I'd offer some ideas to frame this topic, and then my co-collaborators can stay in the frame or leave the frame altogether. Just discard it and go out of bounds is fine. I want to start by saying that Bach's sacred music is about human struggles, with or without text. Bach inspires personal reflection and introspection and meaning-making and connection with a higher power, transcending time and space. And Bach's music is also deeply grounding. So think about, for those of you who know Bach's music, Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor is transcendent, and that ground bass that just goes on and on and on as he improvises over it. Or the cello suites. That's another example, I think, of music that represents the human struggle, for a cellist to struggle to play it, but also strengthens the community bonds within the community of music makers and between the music makers and the congregations or audiences. The second point I want to make is that Bach combines beauty with the moral imperative of ethical behavior, right? Those two things cannot be separated in Bach's music. If you think about the text of Bach's cantatas, it's all sprinkled throughout are the mandate to love one another, to reject materialism and embrace compassion, to share resources, to struggle with beauty and art enhances communal resilience and personal resilience too, I think. In a dozen years ago, so some of you may not have been born yet, or you were barely born, Peter Sellers gave an interview about the St. Matthew Passion, and I go back to it all the time, and it's available on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it to you. Early in the interview, he talks about being adopted by Emmanuel at age 21, when he came to learn that the music of Bach is not abstract, but deeply practical, that it's about lived experiences. And he talks about the context in which Emmanuel music engages the music of Bach in a place that has a long long history of radical welcome and hospitality for people who are very vulnerable and struggling. It's not theoretical. We host an overnight shelter at Emmanuel and several day shelter programs, including an art studio for people who are lacking adequate and dignified places to live. We offer and we house something like 20 12-step meetings, a suicide prevention program, artists in residence, a wood sculptor and a fabric artist, puppeteer. And the Emmanuel congregation is both multi-faith and no faith. Most here, at least in part because of the music and the social justice commitments combined. That's what draws our congregation. Peter Sellers talked about how hard the world is and how the music of Bach gives us so many notes because the path to changing our lives is very steep. Bach gives us harmonic enlightenment in which even a crisis point, Sellers says, you can be assured that you are on your way home. And that's part of the art that happens in this building, is creating a home and creating that is both now and a future. The third point I want to make is that for musicians, Bach's music elevates artistic standards. The harmonies, the counterpoint, the structural genius raises the bar for artistic excellence, which when met, reaffirms the values of patience, persistence, precision, and creativity. For everyone, whether you're a musician or not a musician, listening to the Bach music enhances cognitive ability and emotional intelligence and ability and be mindful. And the music is the dialogue partner across religious and secular philosophies and across all. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carrington for a response, and then we could hear from our artists. I think, there you go.
It's good to see everybody today. Is this mic on? Yes. All right, do me a favor, look at your neighbor and say it's good to see you. It's good to see you, babe. All right. One, we want to say we're very grateful for Emmanuel Music and the Bach Institute and for Reverend Pam, and to be in this space together with you all to make meaning. You talking about Bach introduces us to this idea of the intersection of humanity and struggle. I want to submit to you that Common Cathedral, what's beautiful about Common Cathedral, we're of its kind in the country to have a dedicated mission towards those who identify as being low income and unhoused, right? And so for us, being in community together in itself is a struggle, because persons are bringing their pain, their joy, their sorrow, their hope, right? That struggle to life every day. As Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday today, so quote, he says, "I've seen the power of God transforming the fatigue of despair into the buoyancy of hope. I am convinced that in the struggle for righteousness, the universe bears." When I think about music, for us, music and art and culture is a way to reaffirm and to recognize our humanity. And so when we have common art that happens every Wednesday with our hands or with our voices, with our feet, with our ideas, we are reaffirming our humanity in beautiful ways. And so when I think about how we're talking about Bach, the work that you all are doing, the music that you're making, it's a reaffirmation, right? It's a recognition of our humanity as people and the diversity as well. And so because Common Cathedral, in this next phase that we're in, Common Cathedral is in an exciting phase. We're almost 30 years old, right? I'm going to tell you about Common Cathedral. It was started by a wonderful Episcopal priest named Debbie Little.
She was raised up for ordination by this parish.
Amen, amen, amen. And Debbie Little had a passion for wanting to serve the unhoused. And so her and a couple parishioners went to, I believe it was on Palm Sunday, and they went out to serve food and to sing and to be in community with one another. And then someone who felt the power recognized through the song, right? They said, I'll see you next week. And then Sunday outside on the Boston Common, right? Because there's a connection, there's a deep, right, commitment to recognizing the struggle and the love and the connection that we have for one another. It's,
no matter what the weather.
to Rob's point, no matter what the weather outside, if it snows, when churches shut their doors because of COVID, we were open. We're outside trying to figure out how to make meaning together, singing songs, uplifting our humanity in beautiful ways. So I want to open the floor to Sister Chandra and to Avi for them to respond to the prompt, to the conversation in any way that they feel fit.
Well, I think that we should just remember that Bach was a punk rock party boy in the late 16th century, and the fact that we have this beautiful, beautiful music is a testimony to someone having to fight, very much like myself, having to fight his own addiction and his own demons to get through it and to move beyond his worldly self into a realm of unworldliness and talent, and to know that we get to represent someone who had his own struggle in life and his own struggle with his own body, as someone who has fibromyalgia, who knows what to get up and struggle every day with my own body just to be alive. The music has always meant the world to me. It meant when my father was dying in the late 1990s, for the Bach Institute, because I'm also a member of the Boston Early Music Festival, and I found all experiences, some of the best experiences in the world that I had when my father was dying, because they helped to heal my heart in profound ways. And it's just to me to be able to perform, to actually be we've been working on this for been a powerful experience. So I just want to open that up, that people, that this is to meet them Wednesday, and I'm glad that we're all here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say a few things. Hi guys, my name is Avi. Well, I grew up as a choir kid. Like, you know, I spent a lot of time in choirs and bands and music practice. And I didn't really connect with a lot of it until I grew older. And one of the first times I heard Bach as an adult was his cello suites performed in a TED Talk. And the cellist played the entire thing through. It was like some 6 hours. And it was a really like terrible time for me. And I just remember just like sitting there and being like totally at peace for like the entire time. And I was like, so this is what it feels like to like have a quiet brain, to be like normal for like a period of time. And I was like, man, this is what music can do for people. And I was just really transformed at that time. And I'm so honored to be here because it helps me to know that like I'm not alone and that people can really share in the joy and emotion of music. And that's really touching for me. And another thing I wanted to mention also is that with Martin Luther King's birthday, I also share an important moment or milestone because I was born on August 28th, which is the anniversary of the March on Washington, but I was born like some 40 years after that. So I like to think that it's a good luck charm or something like that, because you know the work is never done. There's always more struggle, more people to lift, you know, more change to be had, more things to be done. And one of my favorite quotes I want to share with you guys today comes from Angela Davis. And she says, "I will no longer be accepting the things I cannot change, but I will no longer accept the things I cannot change, but I will change the things I cannot accept." So I challenge you guys to do that, you know? If you see something wrong, speak up. If you know that something is wrong and you have the platform, use it. So I challenge you guys to be better people, even when it's hard, even when it's not easy, because people will join you. There's safety in numbers, and we will get stronger, our voices will get louder, and I know that every one of you is here for a reason. So thank you guys.
So, Avi, I wonder if you would share one of your poems, or more than one. If you...
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
That's my job.
Yikes. So I read this poem earlier for some of you today, and it's called Mind of Noah. I'll ride the waves of dopamine for a stretch of time. To embolden, we crave lucid indecision sublime. If you told me I could come along while I bring some rhymes, would a tune or a shanty be such a crime? Don't call for unbehaves, their scanty morals amiss. Here, sir, the victims of DJ flooded with ignorant bliss. Stuffed in his locker, speedy talker, greedy cord with no gliss. And over fear we stand, buried in caves, some like this. 6 fortnights, my maps adjusted for an error margin. Plus or minus to be sure no seeds of doubt can barge in. Gargantuan inroads, so complex, the paths we charge in. Pair them up, 4-footed friends we want, and flying sergeants. Won't vex see if it's implying metaphysics at play. Meteorology, a violent atmosphere will decay. Half-life, irradiated, spirit still for this day. 1 cubit short until we spent the 30th day. Not a drill, beholden to a standard barely intact. But we knew it fairly early, dearly destined impact. Wandered free from merely 2-bit coins, your sense has no fact. To see the grand design, be more nearly exact. Thank you. If anybody has any questions or comments about the poem, that I welcome any feedback.
I think it's amazing how you weave in the biblical narrative and the current events of climate change and the impact that that's having on the whole community. And I would love to see your poem in print, because it feels like it's multi-layered and beautiful and complex. That's the second time I heard it, and I heard new things that I didn't hear earlier today. It's a sign of a good piece of art that you want to hear it again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's very touching.
I just want to jump in and say that with Avi's permission, we will publish it
In the Showcase Concert Program.
Wonderful.
So it will be available to read and absorb. Avi, I wonder if you can explicate your poem a little bit, walk us through it,
Okay.
and talk about your process a little bit.
Well, funnily enough, it's really about the agony of dedication, you know, and the uncertainties and doubts of life. Like I said, I spent a lot of time kind of getting familiar with music, and it's a very isolating practice, you know, a lot of hours spent practicing, And sometimes people look at you like you're crazy, like you really want to spend like decades of your life knowing an instrument better than you know people. Like, well, yeah, I'm kind of antisocial, and that's kind of the point, you know. But I don't want to be rude, and like, you know, it's part of like communicating and connecting with people. So I kind of approached her from that point. I was like, what would Noah say if he could say these things to God, you know? Like, you're crazy, but I get it, you know? You're crazy, but I get it. We all have human moments, and I was just trying to tap into that, like, frustrated energy, I guess.
You know, as we're talking about music, the question that came to me is that we live in the midst of a broken world, but yet we're always making beautiful music. And as we're talking about justice and equity, my question maybe for the panel is, how can we use music in this moment to leverage music as a way to bring about justice and equity in our community?
I think it's been important to leverage music since the fall of the record companies in the late 1990s, and people have independently taken over music. One of my dear best friends is Billie Eilish. I actually got to hang out with her for a little short while at CWX in New York this year, and to know that she's only 22, and to know that she's been a dear friend ever since, because she's actually a cannabis patient, that I've known her ever since she was one of the cannabis kids. It's just been so vital to see so many young people take over their lives and take over their own voice without a structure. And I think it's going to be a lot more important in the coming years, seeing that our world is falling apart because of climate change. I have friends who are severely, severely affected by the fires in LA, and there's a lot of heartbreak to that. I am blessed to have not lost any people, but I have friends who've lost people. And I think it's really important that people keep rising up and speaking up, because without that, we're going to lose a generation of people and a voice, because there is no centralized way to have a voice right now, except by choosing to go out and doing your own independent media, doing your own albums, making art, and just keeping things moving and keeping things alive and moving forward. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's so important that we include more and more artists, that we include more and more younger people into the conversation about what is art, and how do we make art in a time of struggle, and how do we make art in a time of change, when the world that we're waking up to might not be a world that we expect it to. Ever since COVID, it seems that things have progressed down a darker road, and I'd like to actually see people wake up and realize that they individually have a voice.
I think making art accessible to everyone, and you know, in our unjust society, art is an extravagance, and in a just society, art is essential. It's what brings us together, and I think we have to just continue to assert that and open up avenues for expression, whether it's music or visual art or performing art or written art, you know, to claim that is what makes life worth living.
And as you all were talking, you talked about the brokenness of the world, and I really thought, like, what does it mean to wake up every morning to make music for a broken world? And I was thinking about this wonderful theologian. His name is Walter Brueggemann, and he has this great quote, and he has a book called The Prophetic Imagination. He would say the role of the prophet is to keep the ministry of imagination alive. But I want to remix that and suggest that the role of the musician maybe is to keep the ministry of imagination alive. Mm-hmm. Like, as we hear the chords playing, as we engage in art making, it's a way to allow us to tap into imaginations that can rewrite or fix, I think, the broken worlds that we live in. Any other thoughts on this subject? Yes.
Here, wait.
Thank you. I'm inspired to hear you talk about the continuing during COVID of the Common Cathedral and Ecclesia Ministries outdoors. And that's inspiring to realize that, because so many people were and felt so isolated, and they didn't have any idea how they could safely connect, or whatever that meant to safely connect. And sometimes coming together to practice ministry outdoors, a lot of people think, well, is that safe? And during COVID, it was the safe way to do that. And I recall vividly, speaking of the cello concertos of Bach, I've got a wonderful recording of Yo-Yo Ma playing those. But I also think about his example, and he got together with Emmanuel Axe out in Western Massachusetts during the summer of COVID, one of the summers, and they played music on the street corners. I mean, these world-famous musicians, usually, they could command huge salaries, and they went around in a flatbed truck and played music for whoever wanted to listen. And that's an incredible example. And the PBS NewsHour started Canvas because Yo-Yo Ma said, I'm going to play in my home for your listeners. Lots of connections.
I'm going to get to you, Rob. I want to respond to that really quickly. One, to your point, I have a couple of friends who are cellists. One of my best friends, he's actually a part of a group. A quick shout out to the Sons of Serendip. And they're a wonderful group that I think they're made up of a guitarist, a cellist, a harpist, and a lead vocalist. And part of their responsibility of what they might say, bringing beauty to the world, is to making their music accessible. And so you'll see them sometimes in LA or in Boston, literally singing on the train, right? And so I think that's maybe my challenge, as Avi was talking about, challenging us to be better people. Like, how do we make the music that you're creating, the beautiful music that you're making every day, how do you make that accessible in your own way to the people who are around you, to the people who might not have access to the music, right? Because I think it's important to name that in some ways there's a divide in terms of being able to access certain types of music. So it's important to name that. The other part I want to say around, for Common Cathedral, it was important for us to remain open because we would have literally died if we didn't, right? And I want to go a little bit deeper and suggest to us that in many ways, if we lose connection, right, there's a spiritual death that can happen because of that, right? And so I'm very grateful for the former executive director, Amanda Grant Rose, who really worked with the board of directors and to the community and the staff to suggest we have to figure out a way to remain open. Because if we don't, our community will spiritually die, but then also because of the way in which we provide the essentials for individuals, people can literally physically, right, lose something as well. And so I want to name that. Brother Rob, did you have a point or a question, Brother Rob?
Yeah. Here, Rob. Use this.
Yeah. I was going to say, just as Bach has shown us, and as well as many other, countless other musicians between him and now, music can unite the masses for whatever cause. Just as Common Cathedral, as well as many of the people who make it up, including me, my honey bun, and Avi. Last summer, had marched on Washington as part of the Poor People's Campaign. And we have a whole music set that unites the masses despite our struggle. And one of our favorites is, and they even had a contest on this leading up to the march, was Everyone Has a Right to Live. And it also has the refrain, of course, says, we say poverty no more, we seek justice for the poor. And when we went down there, I've been marching on it since 2018. Chandra's parents were part of the.
My mom was part of the original planning for
Yes. And in
for what would have been the Poor People's Campaign. It came out of the work of MLK from the trash strike, and it was supposed to be the next march he did. Unfortunately, he got assassinated 2 weeks before it happened.
And that also, in 68, I mean, in 2028, it will mark it will mark 50 years since the original Poor People's Campaign was drafted but couldn't get off the ground. Fast forward, wait, no, it'll be 60 years because 2018 was the 50th when Dr. William Barber founded the Poor People's Campaign and had that first march. So yeah, 28 will be the 60th anniversary of the Poor People's Campaign. So yes, if we're still on this, if we're still around or still on this planet, I know it's going to be I'm hoping for it to be a mega march.
Amen.
Thank you, Rob. It's beautiful. Any other questions or responses?
I think my response to that is the fact that we don't remember that MLK, towards the end of his life, was actually becoming a lot more socialist in his teachings, and he saw that the war that had been racial inequity was actually fueled by something a lot deeper in this country, and that was called class inequity, and that was called wage inequity. And right now we sit on the precipice of having a man who not only exploited workers, never let black people live in his buildings, and actually did a lot in Florida. The reason that Trump cannot live legally at Mar-a-Lago is the fact that he passed laws against immigrants living on properties like his. So he basically made himself he basically lives there as a squatter because because people aren't allowed to legally live on a country club in Florida. The fact that we're going to have a president who doesn't believe in the bare modicum of union rights, labor rights, or human rights it's frightening. I mean, there is going to be a counter protest on the Boston Common on Monday, and I do invite everybody to please come out and please come to this rally because we need as many people as possible to stand up. Yeah, I know Rob's got stuff, but it's incredible to me to think that we sit here at a time period after a world pandemic, knowing that we've got to do knowing that not only do we need to stand up and rise up, we actually need to hear the voices of everyone, because right now we're all at jeopardy, because right now most of us in this room are workers. And we're people who deserved union representation. We're people who deserved people who deserved a better government than the one that we're going to be faced with. We deserve better than the oligarchs talking to us like we're children. We deserve a revolution. And to think that this is where we're standing, that we're sitting right here in a room talking to each other, and it might be something that we might not be able to think about. Just thinking about the clampdown on human rights that's gonna start if any of his cockamamie ideas become reality. So we have to, at this point, start thinking about what comes after us and what comes beyond us.
So I wonder about art as subversive. You know, how do we engage art in a way, art and music, arts of all kinds, music and writing and drama and visual arts of all kinds, and how does that subvert the kind of dominant paradigm? And that's a question that's open to you and to anyone else. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Avi?
I think that, well, first of all, I'm going to approach this question from a uniquely personal perspective because I, literally am the child of immigrants. First generation American. My mom comes from Africa, my dad comes from South America. And disregarding the fact that sometimes my family's sides are mutually exclusive, my Latino side doesn't talk to my black side doesn't talk to my Latino side, but that's another question. I applaud America for so much of what it's doing. We are uniquely privileged to be literate, to be able to make our own choices about our bodies, about our living situations, about our relationship status, and at the same time, we are failing so miserably as a developed nation. We spend, I think, as much as our top 20 NATO allies in healthcare and or military expenses, and look at where we are. A healthcare CEO just got assassinated in New York and we're not crying over him, we're applauding the shooter, the murderer. Let's be real, he's a murderer, but he might have did some people a favor if you ask the right people. So that's the current political climate that we're in, and it's a trap of our own making, to be quite honest. So I think that art is a way to express discontent where everything seems like it should be and it isn't. So I just wanted to say that art has been an outlet for many years, many millennia, and it will be a voice for people who can't speak or who don't have the voice to speak at the moment. And I wanted to share another poem with you guys. It's called American Excess. Here, schooled in death and gore, we deny roots and play nice. Facts are valid, but the test comes and there will pay the price. Skin is pallid, young and green, now blue, their light is on ice. Taste of life, no breath in excess, un-American vice. They're pulled the sanguine vitals in a clinical drone. I'm sick of ashen faces, beep, beep, beep monotones. Nasser Riemann, backwards asinine, look up from your phones. Took up for the recital, start collecting your bones. Protect the same design whilst you waste away underfoot. Pretend it's fine, the world's on fire, and we're screaming to boot. Damn man, shoot. American excess don't sound all that cute. I'm wishing I was deaf to have the news speak on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, Reverend Pam, as you posed that question, one, I want to leave space for us to respond to Avi's poem, or if you want to walk us through the poem a little bit, Avi?
I guess I was feeling so much frustration about, I guess this started about gun violence, first and foremost. Like, I was one of the first generations to be born around the time of Columbine, and I grew up with school shooting drills, but they didn't tell us that they were school shooting drills. So they would have teachers come around and pull on the doors, like knock on the windows, and it was really traumatizing, you know? Like, because we didn't know what was happening, and like, why are the teachers like trying to hurt us, you know? Or like pretending to try to hurt us. And it's just very scary that like you can have a child, send them to school, and they come home in a body bag, you know? And it's just crazy to me. Like, it's still incomprehensible to me that this is a uniquely American problem, and we haven't solved it in the time that I've been alive. And it's been a problem since the time that I've been alive. So, and the one that really tore me apart was Uvalde, because as a Latina woman, like, you know, it kind of sucks that police officers will watch children die for an hour or like 2 hours. And like parents can come and get their kids while the cops are outside and leave with their kids while the cops are outside. And, you know, some parents didn't get that opportunity. So it was just a very devastating and heartbreaking time in the Latino community. So I just wanted to make space for that. And also just like, this is not a problem everywhere else in the world. Even where my family comes from, like, you know, they have, you know, sense. They have, they're not really desensitized to violence, even though it happens in their countries every day. But like, I think the American way is just thoughts and prayers, you know. They'll throw thoughts and prayers at it and hope it sticks, hope that like, you know, some of our politicians grow conscience or, you know, have their personal stakes in the matter, have their children involved, God forbid. But like, I feel like that's what it's gonna take for some change to happen. So it was just a lot of anger on the page, you know? And I just really needed to be written, and I'm glad you guys are giving me the opportunity to share it. So thank you.
Well, politicians getting a conscience. Oh, sorry.
Just so that the live stream can hear you too.
Yeah, with the politicians getting a conscience, the only thing with that is, I mean, giving politicians in the way, well, some of them are, I would be better off holding my breath, waiting for the second coming before a politician gets a conscience.
Jesus is soon to return. You know, I will, before we maybe open it up for questions, Pam, if that's okay, I want to share one more thing, and maybe we'll have final comments, maybe. I really believe that music is revolutionary, that art is revolutionary. I'll share a brief story. One of my favorite artists is Alexis French. He's a British pianist and composer. And he played at this beautiful church in Brooklyn in December. My wife and I went, and I was so excited to see him. But when I went, I had a headache. My back was hurting. I was stressed out. And I remember going there, like I was actually low-key angry going to a music concert, literally. It was cold outside. And then after about the second song, didn't have a headache. My back wasn't hurting, right? The stresses of life were gone. In that moment, I was with my beautiful wife in the candlelight with about 100 people, listening to music as literally as he played each key, it felt like it was massaging my heart, right? So the individual moment, like, I know it might be like silly, but the music healed me, right? In the same way, I believe that the music that you all are making every day, the music that you are dreaming about every day has the power to heal people, right? Like I believe that is a gifting from God that is given to us, that is not just for our own well-being, but to be freely shared. So I end there, and I'll ask my colleagues, Chandra and Avi, Reverend Pam, if they want to share any last remarks, and if it's okay, we'll maybe move to more questions.
I don't have much to add except to say that's not silly at all. That's the truth. Music is healing, profoundly healing, and an engagement in all the arts is a way to heal personally and communally.
I think beyond healing, music has meant the world to me throughout my whole life. But learning to actually do flow arts, I learned flow arts later in life. I've been living with fibromyalgia since I was probably about 12, but I wasn't formally diagnosed until I was 18. And getting the ability to actually be coordinated enough to walk and spin poi and to actually be able to go out and dance, I got a little bit later in life because it came from really, really hard work and physical therapy. I was about 50 when I started. I was about 40 when I started my journey as a belly dancer as well as someone who can actually spin. And so I was about 48 when I started performing outside, and we do that to raise money to go to cannabis conventions, and to actually do things like the 420 Rob show, and to actually survive, and to do it as an older artist is an actually revolutionary act. To think about the way that women in our society who are over 50, I'm 54 now, that we are not seen as beautiful, that a lot of women who are older are not seen as having a voice or having a body or having the right. And the fact that I'm willing to rock my gray hair and say F it, it's like, because I could dye my hair purple or look like a younger punk rocker. That doesn't interest me. Being my actual, true, authentic self, and being an artist over, I don't know what's polite society wants to call a certain age, an F polite society. It's like I am so proud. I am so proud that I get to dance every day, because I remember days in which I couldn't. And I know that the physical struggle that I've been through with my body to be able to perform, and that in itself is a radical act.
So I have one more poem to share, but before that, I want to make a couple comments. I wanted to lift up a few things that you guys have said. First, what Chandra said here about being your most truest and authentic self. And I want to thank all of you guys for being your most authentic selves, being your truest selves, and getting yourselves here. However you got here, you're here now, and the world needs you. I need you, and we need you. So thank you guys so much. It means a lot to me from the bottom of my heart, and I just want to thank you guys. And also, I think what you said about art being subversive, musicians are artists. You guys use your hands, your voices, your very breath to make beautiful sounds. You guys should be amazingly proud of yourselves, and I want you guys to give yourselves a round of applause right now. From one musician to another, I love you guys so much, and you have a huge fan for the rest of my life. Thank you. But also, I just want to restate what a huge honor it is. You guys have given me such an amazing platform, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so thank you. And the poem is called Problem Renaissance. Problem Renaissance. Dare I tell the fate of dreams deferred, the fires they stoke, Can't quite put my finger on it. Saccharin-coated smoke. Grapes of wrath worn into raisins since the dust bowl awoke. Will they linger in the sun, a quick-dried cranberries joke? So we spoke, but it's past time for speech. No truce in the nows. Last time treaty men were here, brought some drinks for the cows. Think for rhymes, no cap about it. We get lost in the house. Still pedantic, spill semantics, ghost of grammar and rouse. Translucent malintent, to each his own from the top. Push away the refuse dish, no way to sweeten this crap. If we bake another pie, can we add berries and sap? Close the gap, snack on the bloated rich, their fermented flaps. Dilemma undiluted, fold up the map. Thank you.
So I'm a little choked up. I'm so moved by everything I've heard. And I want to thank you all for being our guests and for uplifting truth to us. Avi, your final poem made me think of the Bach Magnificat, made me think of the Esurgentes, right? The hungry will be fed with good things, and the rich will be sent empty away. Exactly the music that we've been working on this week and what we're thinking about in terms of overturning an unjust society and how this is language we read in the Bible. This is music. This is text that Bach set to music more than once. In fact, if you come on Sunday, you will hear 2 different ways that Bach engages this text so vividly. So it's my opportunity and my privilege now to invite any comments and questions from anyone who's here, and particularly our fellows. If you do make a comment, please introduce yourself before you speak so that all of us can know who you are and what you play.
Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel Anker. I'm a violinist coming from New Jersey, Montclair, New Jersey. And one of our icebreakers at the beginning of the Emmanuel Intensive was brought to us by our dear Reverend here, asking us about our faith background. And that's one of those few banned topics, I feel like, at Thanksgiving or the dinner party or whatever. And I don't know now a music that confronts me more deeply with that question than Bach. What is it what is it that we believe in? We've also been discussing, of course, the question of Bach's irrelevance based on his maybe outdated beliefs, many outdated beliefs, and not maybe. But I think I'm more challenged now by the relevance of some of his ideas, thinking of the Deposuit and in the Magnificat as well, of casting down the mighty and bringing up the lowly, and getting to actually play what that could sound like is particularly cool. But more than anything, I'm broken open by some of what we've heard today, especially from our artists Chandra and Avi. The points that stood out to me the most were the fact that Bach was a punk rock party boy. I'm going to leave with that. I'm going to tell all my students. But also how his music helped heal your heart in profound ways, because I experience that too every day. And especially in those times when one feels the least inspired or the most alone. For instance, in the pandemic, this was the music that we could return to, this incredible poetry of Bach. I'm thinking of what Avi shared about hearing all of the suites played through and feeling that this is what it feels like to be normal. That resonates on a deeper level than you may know.
So you're weird too. I get it.
Exactly. Yes. No. Someone up here said you're crazy, but I get it, and that is too real. it can feel sometimes like classical music is an escapist pursuit, so seemingly out of touch with what it is we're dealing with in the world every day. But it feels like now more than ever, we are here, Bach is here to overturn the unjust society that we may be seeing taking shape around us in insidious ways. This morning we went down to perform and offer this music as a gift, but I think it's safe to say we left with more gifts than there were to bring. So thank you to our artists and to all of our speakers. Thank you to Pam and to Ryan and to all of the fellows for everything that has occurred and that's left here.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm also one of the fellows. I play the oboe. I'd like to touch on the like escapist idea of classical music. I think to me, Bach also brings this like sense of hope, because it's so what people might consider outdated, but it's so simple. Like one of the arias that we're playing is, "I'm satisfied with what I have, and I'm not going to take from anyone else because I appreciate what I have." And I think that the music is just so simple that it like sparks this idea of hope that we can not revert back to how it was, but take some things from Bach's time of being satisfied with what we have and loving one another despite all the complications of today's society. So I think that that idea of hope for a simpler, more loving time is something that always speaks to me about Bach.
Could I respond to that really quickly? I want to say that if Bach was writing about being hopeful, it was because people weren't hopeful. This is a way to look at Scripture as well. If someone is giving instructions, it's because it's not happening. So don't look at don't imagine some good old days when it used to be happening. Imagine that we're struggling to find hope, and Bach's congregation was also struggling to find hope. And that's why they were singing about having hope.
Hi, my name is Catherine. I'm the other violin fellow at Bach Institute. My question is for Chandra and Aviv. I guess you guys spoke about, how music has been around your lives, but I was wondering, how did you get into your own respective art forms? I mean, Chandra, you said or Pam said that you're like a multidisciplinary artist, and Aviv, you do poetry. I was just wondering, how did you get into that? Like, how did you start, diving into that side of expressing yourself?
I will speak for myself. I grew up neurodivergent, and to be quite honest, music wasn't enough. I feel like it helped, but it wasn't the whole solution. It was only part of it. The same way that other hobbies, other people have gaming or reading or writing. My thing is probably languages and music and maybe poetry. I speak 5 or 6 languages, and I just don't like being bored. And, classical music is sometimes boring, not to say, but Bach is one of my favorite composers. And when I tell you that the cello suites is one of my favorite compositions, it's just a riveting piece of music. That's probably one of the pieces that I listen to most, on repeat, and I don't need to change it for the entire playing. But I just feel like it's an enormous compliment to music, and I feel like a lot of my musical ability has been stretched and put into my poetry. A lot of my meters a lot of my rhythms can be set to music, or like a lot of it came from music. I was listening to different composers and I just started writing ideas. Like Mozart is also one of my favorite composers. I think you guys played a piece earlier in your intensive, and it reminded me of Lacrimosa by Mozart. And it's just mystifying to me how these brilliant musicians created like music that's still played centuries later, and it's still like so beautiful, and it's permanent. Like wherever you listen to it, the same emotions, the same reactions, like it's just beautiful and transformative, and like only a unique kind of crazy can dedicate themselves to playing it and playing it well. So like, it's just an amazing opportunity to hear you guys play, and like to know that the music will never die. Like there's always gonna be love and appreciation and like just attention to detail that Bach and Mozart and all his contemporaries would have loved to know, to know that none of their life's work is going to waste. So that's the main thing. But really just like music draws on so many other different disciplines, and I feel like musicians also got into it because like there wasn't enough for you in the world, so you decided to pick up an instrument, or you decided to use your voice, and it's just what we were born to do. So that's pretty much my story.
The answer for me is a little bit different from that, because see, I was born in 1970, and before there was a definition of autism being more than a kid who couldn't speak. The child who couldn't speak in my family was my youngest brother. He was nonverbal until he was 4 years old. Me and my baby brother Anel got our autism diagnosis later because they didn't have a diagnosis for Asperger's until 1994, and we were both in college when that happened. And that's a really interesting family story. And we actually got to shape, my brother Anel actually got to shape the history of how that happened in Massachusetts and in scientific literature. My brother and I were both members of MAPS, and my mother was a fashion designer in New York. My mother was a fashion designer in New York and had to live with being a Black artist during a time in which Black artists were not supported, in which Black artists often lived between job to job and lived between being rich and poor. There are times in which we had to live, in which we were on food stamps because my mom was making very, very little money. And during the summer of 1974, right before the Watergate trials, my mom and my dad ended up, one of the reasons that Luigi is a folk hero right now is people like my mom who ended up in financial debt so bad that they declared bankruptcy in 1974. And my dad was never able to buy a house in this country after that because my father was from India. And people who aren't native to here don't really get a chance to restore their credit in any meaningful way if they are hit by something like bankruptcy because of a medical illness. Unfortunately, it's too common in this country to have people hit by circumstances like that. So I grew up struggling. My mother grew up struggling in New York City, so I grew up having to hang out with my cousins, and my cousins were part of the war. My mom and my cousins were part of the Warhol scene. My cousins were early punk rockers. I got to do things like at the age of 4, go to see Iggy Pop play his very first show at CBGB's because it was an afternoon all-ages show. And I started making art, my own art, independent of my mom, who was a great help, but until I was about 6 years old. And I decided to say, F this is my own art, and cut my mom out of my artistic process. So when I was about 6, I started taking photographs, and I started making really great big collage pieces. And out of that artwork and out of all of that work has come some of the work that I'm doing right now, which has been a lot of the build up for my character Canna Bliss, who I spin poi as, and I actually do the podcast, the 420 Rob Show, as she's a creation from she is a character I made up, and I actually make the clothes, and do all the artwork, and make buttons for this character. But it's been a way to synthesize and have a voice when I felt voiceless, and to be able to create things of beauty during times in which I haven't been feeling beautiful, because I'm a chronic pain patient, and there are times of deep struggle and not beauty and depression that comes with this illness. 1 in 4 people actually kill themselves as fibro patients. It is staggering to think that I've had to use art as a way to survive, but art has been survival. So I love sharing that with the world.
I just want to, my name is Adam. I'm a fellow here. I play the cello. And I wanted to touch upon something that both Chandra and Avik were discussing about class and music. I think it made me think about how most of these composers and the musicians of their day that we discuss, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, were working class people. They were predominantly working class, if not servants. And class is inseparable from their music in the way that they view class within their own society, within what society is today. And because of that, I think their music is infused with a sense of righteousness and a justice that is very unique. And I just appreciate your guys' words making me think about that and appreciate that angle even more so. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone over here? No? Down here? Front row? Okay. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Anthony. I am one of the singers. I'm the baritone fellow at the Bach Institute. I just mainly wanted to thank both of our artists for not only speaking with us here tonight, but also for sharing your art with us earlier today. I honestly feel like it was similar to what Gabriel said. I feel like we left with more gifts than we ended up giving, which I guess is part of the collaborative process as artists. But it was really inspiring in like a very kind of serendipitous way when I was part of the first piece that performed this morning, and I honestly wasn't. I don't know if I had any expectations or anything about how it would go going into it, but Chandra, when you started spinning as a response to what we were doing, it was so like, it was electric. It was very, like it reinvigorated what I was thinking about and how I was portraying the music in such like a raw and really like powerful way. And I feel like that's often something that, again, similar to what Gabriel was saying, like I feel like classical music can often be seen as kind of like an escapist art, and I feel like it can feel like you like lock yourself in the practice room to like spend 10,000 hours to master this thing, and it's like you never see another person, and so it can be very easy to kind of trap yourself in that mindset where it's like, if I just like hone my craft by myself, then I can like do this thing. But it was so uplifting to be able to share that performance space with you, and then also Avi getting to hear your poetry throughout this, and as well as earlier, it just like opened up new sides of how I was viewing the performance, even though obviously I was, providing mainly like vocal, musical sound elements to it, like getting to see the like visual kind of like creation of that just added such a dimension to the performance that I just wasn't even thinking about. And it really helped to kind of challenge me, as Avi was saying. It's like really like, furthering my craft and furthering how I view music and how it's a vehicle to connect to other people. And so I just wanted to thank both of you for, sharing that with us. It was truly an honor to do that.
Yeah. Other side.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Elaine, and I have been here when there was kind of like a Bach improvisation into other music styles. It was very wonderful and scintillating, and I think jazz musicians in particular have been so excited about Bach, the harmony and the modulations, and they even hold concerts in honor of him and playing their own interpretations. And recently at NEC, there was an informal performance of modern music where a physician during pandemic tried her hand on composition and persistence, and she played one of the prelude with all the harmony stacked together. And it was very interesting to hear that. It didn't sound like Bach, but she was honoring all the the vertical stacking, and then toward the end, you could tell it was Bach when she just kind of quoted. And I was really glad at that moment, too, because I love Bach in the original form. And I do appreciate all the different creativity, and it makes me want to try to create from that and see if I can, say, in one way, try to preserve the intent of that music, or the other way where people are trying out different expressions in honor of Bach, and he's a great composer.
Hi, I'm Ryan. So many sort of beautiful connections that struck me tonight, and I was reminded in the 1970s when Emmanuel Music began in this parish, and there used to, I don't even know if it's still up, there used to be a quote on the doors to the church from the Reverend Al Kershaw, who was the Reverend at the time that enabled Craig Smith to start this crazy idea of a Bach cantata in an Episcopal church. And the quote was that art and love alone are capable of revealing the eternal that stands behind them. And Avi, it was incredibly uplifting and reassuring when I heard you say that what we do is permanent. I think so often as musicians, we feel like you put it out in the performance and then you walk away from it. And you're on to the next thing. And I was really struck by that and how permanent it is what we do. The other thing I wanted to say, and it's more of a question, I guess, for Pam Werntz, who's had a front row seat to hearing probably every single cantata. Pam's been the Reverend here since 2009? Am I right? 2008.
17 years.
And she sits back there and gets to hear all of this. And I was struck by so much of what, when Pam preaches, she talks about the mandate to love. And this idea that if there's one thing you learn, I've taken at least from Pam's sermons, is love. If there's one word to remember, it's love. And that you associate that with what Bach is asking us to do. The mandate to love, the idea of this human struggle that we're all encountering, and of course that human struggle is always reflected in Bach's music and is the most humbling thing we ever do as musicians because of that. But I'm curious, looking at this archaic music and how this whole thing began in the 70s at Emmanuel, but we are often touched and struck and troubled by the fact that these texts still matter today. And as you're sitting up there, observing all of this, having preached on it and tying these strings together, I'm curious from just a purely human standpoint, how does that affect you and move you?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question. So the cantata, I think everyone knows this, but maybe not. The cantata at Emmanuel Church is offered after communion has been distributed, but before we say the thank you prayer, like the thank you and now send us out to do the work you have given us to do. And so it becomes a musical meditation kind of after a shared meal. And that is deeply moving to me. So much so, I've gotten ruined by this place, thankfully. But I don't like to be in a service that doesn't have a cantata because it feels like we're like distributing the food and then we're out the door. It's like eat and run. It's like a meal to go or something. And, you know, and there are people, I mean, this happens probably more in the Roman Catholic tradition than in the Episcopal Church, but it happens in the Episcopal Church too. People come, they get their piece of bread, they get their sip of wine, and they got to go. And so to bask in the beauty of a reflection on whether that's in conversation with my sermon, with the readings, with the hymns, with the season, to just sit and not have any place to go for 20 or 25 minutes is the most beautiful thing that I experience week in and week out. And if you haven't tried it, you should.
It's interesting that this idea of like the cantata coming up after the meal as sort of as an extension on like those sorts of themes came up, because I was thinking of our activity this morning being almost like you know, we're sharing this music that like some people are looking at in a different way than others. And at least for me, like when I was presenting the selection that I played, I'm thinking of it like I don't really have so much of a care of like what people are going to get out of it necessarily. It's just more like putting it out there to get something out of it. And from that experience, I felt I had a similar thinking of like I felt like it was coming together to share music and art in the way that like we come together and share a meal or something like that. So I think looking at this music in the way that us fellows have here and then doing these kinds of activities, it's really sort of helped me clarify like the purpose in terms of like doing music and being a musician, in terms of like the fact that like this, like music, the making of music is like important and beyond just like beyond it being a thing for me to do. So that was really cool to hear, and that was a really fulfilling experience for me too. And by the way, I'm Nick. I'm one of the fellows here. I play trumpet.
I want to add that when one of the things that drew me to the priesthood was the teaching of Jesus, as I understand it, to be about feeding people and setting them free. And my favorite thing to do in church is to put bread in people's hands. When people put their hands out, and I put bread in their hands, and then I have a turn putting my hand out and having someone put bread in my hand. Whether someone has their head bowed and their eyes closed, or their head is uplifted and they're looking in my eyes, you know, the outstretched hand reminds me that we are all beggars, and that, you know, to use a churchy word, evangelism is a matter of one beggar showing other beggars where some bread is. And I feel like that's what I'm reflecting on, kind of no matter what the cantata text is for the day, is that experience of how we are all hungry and we all need each other to feed one another.
Hi, my name is Helen Lee, and I actually do folk music. And then we have a poetry. We would playing with the Mandarin Chinese and European language as well. Should I read it to everyone? Yes. Okay. It's by my daughter too. The shape of love, peace, and unity. And if anyone feel a sense of connecting with your musical instrument, feel free to let me know at the end. And this is on Amazon.com too, the poetry book. The shape of love, peace, and unity. Love doesn't have a shape. She follows her own design. Love may walk in a circle or in a straight line. Love may trip and stumble. In fact, love often will fall. But love is never alone. Love is awaiting your call. Love will help out her fellows and anyone that's in need. Love will offer a snack to everyone that's on love's team. Love might sometimes get angry and even sound a bit mean. And when love gets really upset, love might make you want to scream. But love will sort herself out. So give love a pat on the back, or give love a break, or give love a good laugh. Sometimes love goes out to take a walk in the woods. Love might need time to herself to think and wonder and rest. But if you see love alone, be sure to stop by and say hi. Maybe share a piece of gum, or give love a high five, or offer a shoulder to lean on, or offer to give her a hug. Because that's what love would do for you. Of course she would. She is love. Thank you.
That's beautiful, thank you.
So we're trying to have guitar playing and the piano playing around this, or any instruments that you feel inspired, please let me know. We're trying to have the song compiled together to the Olympics as well, and the United Nations. So let me know. I know there's a lot of genius here, musician genius. Thank you.
Are there any other people who want to share this evening? Well, that was any note to end on. That was a marvelous one to end on. And I'm really overwhelmed and astonished by what an incredible evening this was. Thank you. And I want to tell everyone that our incredible artists here will also join us on stage for the showcase concert. We will have poetry from Avi. We will have some of the amazing spinning that you only heard described. Chandra will be performing with some of our music. And
I'll be her prop master.
Excellent. We'll have a prop master.
And I would gladly love to do the prop mastering for the set. I mean, for, you know, putting the instruments away, you know, doing all the behind-the-scenes work.
Thank you for that offer. Thank you. So I hope that you will come and enjoy the culmination, the fruits of all of our work on Sunday evening. But before that, tomorrow night, we have another amazing event. We have a masterclass for solo string players. All 5 of our string players, our 2 violins, our violist, and our 2 cellists, will be playing works of Bach and receiving coaching and expert input from Heidi Braun-Hill, the concertmaster of the Emmanuel Music Orchestra. That will be a wonderful event. And then on Saturday, the rehearsal for the Sunday offering of the cantata will be an open rehearsal that starts at 11:30. All are welcome to come and join us and observe the rehearsal. After that rehearsal, we will have a conversation about the cantata, which is a very great piece, Alles nur nach Gottes Willen, everything according to God's will. And that will be led by Ryan and myself. And during the rehearsal and the Sunday offering, our fellows will be taking the lead roles as soloists, so we're very proud of them. Thank you again, and I hope you continue to come and join us for the Bach Institute and support this incredible work that we're doing.